Hey, it's Joe, and this is my next project.
Another evening in a shop. We're going to talk about Ackerman on this front end. This is our little project car, Zen Coupe. It's a 2002 Volkswagen Bug, starting its new life as a little hot rod, suicide door rat rod. It's cool. We're just having a blast doing it. We're going for the cheap and easy as opposed to the expensive and hard to find. Donor parts are 2002 Volkswagen Bug, the 2002 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo rear axle and front axle, and that's where we're starting, on the front axle. And we're talking about Ackerman. I hope you've watched other videos. You should know a little bit about it, a little bit about Ackerman before you watch this video. You know, you've seen the signs in the amusement parks. You must be at least this tall to ride this ride. Well, that kind of applies here, but Ackerman's, I don't think it's too complicated. Let's start right here. I made this little tool. It's just a square, just like this one, but I can't get this one around the arm and everything, so I made this. And what this is for is the main thing you need to remember about Ackerman is the first pivot point through 90 degrees loses. In the competition, to see which spindle rotates the most degrees rotates, the one that passes through 90 degrees loses. And this 90 degrees is the center line of the tie rod, not the pivot point. Take this center line right here, find the 90 degrees, go into the axis where everything, around which everything turns. That's your 90. And if your pivot point was at the 90, there would probably be no Ackerman. If it was a 90 over here and a 90 over there, usually they mirror each other, there would be no Ackerman. But this being a street car, there is Ackerman. You can see it right here. We have a 90, and we have the pivot point just outside the 90. And we've got this little setup made to where we can slide it and make a turn, and we can record it here and on the other side. And the rule is the first one through 90 degrees loses. That means it turns less than the other one. Here's one here. There's 90 there. This one, when we turn that direction, it's not going through 90. It's going that way. It's going to turn more than that one. And we're prepared with this rig we got set up to prove all this. So let's get started. We're going to pull this all the way to the stop. There we go. That's about 3 1/4 inches, 3 1/4 inches of pull this way. And we have this fine, highly sophisticated piece of machinery right here to show us that it has turned some degrees. And then this one over here, well, looky there, it's turned more. Actually, it's turned 5 degrees more. The inside wheel is turning a shorter radius, so it's turned 5 degrees more than the outside wheel. Okay, well, that's fun. Everybody knows that. Let's go back to setup 1. Okay, these are all set up, no tow. And we've got various little experiments we're going to perform on this. We're gonna move this to position number 2. We're gonna move this tie rod in, and let me show you what it does to this 90 degree. It moves it in just like that. It's not gonna change very much, but it's gonna change the amount of movement that you get on this side. And I chose that because a lot of people, rat rod guys, get a rack and pinion and let's mount it on here, and they don't mount it in line here. They squeeze it up against there. And a lot of these measurements are maybe more than they would move in real life, but this is just for demonstration, and we're having fun anyway. So hang tight, and I'm gonna set it up to position number 2, and I'll make it quick and painless. All right. That is all we changed. We changed the inner pivot point of the rack and pinion, or the mounting point of the rack and pinion, if you're running a rack and pinion, and pushed it all the way back. And we changed this, but we did not change where the pivot point crosses 90 degrees. There's 90 degrees. Right around in there. We didn't change that, so this one is still going to turn. It's going to go through 90 first, so first one through 90 loses. This one's going to go away from 90, so it will turn more. Question is, how much more? Let's find out. And turn it all the way to the lock. There we go. And we get our machine here. I don't even know what you call this thing. Nevertheless, I can use it. It turned that much. This one. Wow. That turned a heck of a lot more. In fact, it turned to 9 degrees. So 4 degrees more. The original turned 5 just by moving this back. And let's look, what is that? 3 inches, 2.5 inches. Just moved it 2.5 inches back, and we gained 4 degrees of Ackerman. I don't know if that's of Ackerman. We gained 4 degrees. Why is this? Is this thing stuck or something? Oh. There we go. Okay, back to setup number 1. Now, the next setup, when we moved it back, we gained more degrees turn on the inside wheel. And we're going to move it out to position number 3 and see what that does. Let's just see. I'm going to set you up over here. Very quick. I'm going to change that to position 3. Well, what do you think's going to happen? Let's take a closer look here of what we just did. And I know most people won't mount the rack and pinion out that far, but that's okay. This is just for demonstration. What have we done? What have we done? We have moved this out to where it is very close to a 90 degree there. And this one also is very close to 90 degree there. The 90 degree is relative to the center line of the tie rod and the axis. Now we've got this pivot point pretty close to 90 degrees in there. So let's see what happens now. And we will pull it to the stop. And get our little machine here. This stays the same. This one turns the same almost every time. Wow, that's pretty close. It took almost all of the extra degrees out of it. Not all of it. We didn't hit it exactly. But you can see how changing this changes the Ackerman. Because I know people buy these straight axles. They just bought it off the ground. They don't know if it's front steer or rear steer or what the heck it is. And sometimes that matters and sometimes it doesn't matter. We're gonna take a big swing at it this time and just see what happens. We're gonna move it to number 4 here, and it will really be out of line. Let's see what happens there. All right. So let's see what we did here. Here is 90. This pivot point, this nut right here, the tie rod end, if we back this up and get that in line, and we're turning this to the right, this pivot point is already to the right of 90. This pivot point here, and we set this up. Now, this 90 degree from the axis, the pivot point of the tie rod is inside to the left of 90 degrees. So, what is the rule? The one that runs through 90 loses. So this one is going to turn less than this one. And I don't know if it's a rule or a theory or an axiom or a wives' tale. All I know is we're measuring it and we're going to find out what's what. There we go. Here's our little measuring tool. And it is very, very nice. And this one went through 90 first. It should turn less. And look at that. It did not turn as much as the other one. So that gives you some idea of what happens when you move these tie rods around. We're going to try another setup here. Let me move this. This next setup, we're going to go to setup number 5, which is going to be a straight tie rod, like straight axles often have. But we're going to manipulate this around to where it has no Ackerman. Both of them will get no Ackerman in those. Let's move it back to position number 1. And this setup may take just a little bit longer, but it'll be worth it. Number 5. This one to number 5. And then we're going to change these around. Okay, and this is going to represent the wheel. And I'm going to cover up this spindle where you don't give me grief about it's not pointing in the right direction. And we're going to do this one right quick. All right, position number 5, and you can tell that's straight. There's a guy on the internet, Doug Bug. He's got a great little YouTube channel, big YouTube channel, and he's building an off-road bug. He's got another one, and he does videos. And I saw one of his videos on Ackerman, and his problem is he's got a rotor right here, and he can't turn this, he can't put this pivot point outside because it would hit the rotor there. And we're going to give some options to Doug for his bug. I think he already fixed it. He's a smart guy. And we're 90 degrees here, no toe here, and these are about 90 degrees. The center line of the tie rod is about 90 degrees with the axis, 90 degrees with the axis here. What does that mean? That means they should move just about the same amount, and we're going to find out if that's true. And there is a difference. On our last setup, we moved about 3¼ inches. I don't know how many inches, but we turned this, so we're not moving nearly as many inches here. We didn't get as much turn, but let me show you. We're gonna fix this up. There we are there. And there we are there, 90 degrees. Neither one of them went through 90 degrees first, so it really didn't change. Well, if we wanted Ackerman, let's move back to position number 1. If we wanted Ackerman and we had a rotor right here, like Doug had on that one video, he would have a rotor here also. There is a way to fix that, and I think that's going to be to move this back to position number 6, and we're going to do that right now, and we'll take a look at that. And this is all still front steer stuff. So let's look at our 90. We have our 90 degree here. And this pivot point is outside the 90 degree from the axis to the tie rod. This one here is also outside, would be the same thing. And they're both straight. Let's see what happens when we turn it. And like I said, we're not turning it as much. So we just don't have as much turn there. That's okay. All is well. This should not have changed, which it didn't. And this one should turn more. But looky there, it did. It didn't turn a lot more because it didn't turn as much as the other one, because we didn't pivot this as much because we're hitting the lock. If this was set up correctly, it would turn more. This would also turn more. And you get most of the rotation happens at the end of the stroke. Nevertheless, we did gain some degrees there. And let's see what else we can do. Can we, let me see. Let me turn it back. There we go. We're back to position number 1. And let's reimagine this. Let's reimagine this as a rear steer axle. That is, let's make this the left front. The engine would be in here, or even if it didn't have an engine, didn't matter. This would be the right front. And we want this left front to turn more. So the first one through 90 degrees loses. We would have to turn this to where 90 degrees is outside of this pivot point. As we do that, the tie rod would come back, and we're going to go to number 7 here and see what that does to it. All right, let's see what happens when we turn this a little bit. Turn it to the lock. And then we got our little tool here. This one should be the same as usual, which it is. And that one turned less. Why did it turn less? Because it went through 90 first. See here, there's our 90 degree, just like we said. And the 90 degree point is just outside this pivot point on the bottom here. You can see that. It went through the 90 first, so it turned less than this one. The pivot point on this is inside the 90, and we're turning that way. That one goes through 90 first, it loses. And that little rule just works. It just works pretty good. This spindle does not care where this arm is. This arm could be anywhere around, and you could still hook a tie rod to it, knowing the 90 degree rule, and whether you're building a race car or a parade float or some kind of weird contraption for Burning Man, you could arrange to add Ackerman or take Ackerman out of it, depending on the angle you put these arms at. You farm guys know that those old Ford tractors used to have a spindle that tall, and the arm, the steering arm on those was facing in towards the engine, and then the tie rods went back. So You'll be able to fix all this stuff, I think, if you gain a little understanding, and you won't be an embarrassment to your Burning Man buddies. That is Ackerman in a nutshell. And I'm not saying that you get rid of moving this arm. Moving the arm is very proper, and this is probably secondary, but knowing why you're moving this hole, all you're doing when you move this hole is you're moving it up and down the axis of this, either into a 90 or on one side or the other of 90. And you can just about make it do what you want to do. So now you should be able to walk through the rat rod show, look at some suspension, and know exactly what's going on. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed watching as much as we enjoyed making it. If you did, tell your friends and subscribe. It's important.